It is estimated that there are somewhere from 2 million to 50 million different animal species on Earth, but how did all these species even come to be? The creation of new species is known as speciation. It is the formation of new and distinct species during evolution. A group of organisms is a species if they can interbreed and produce fertile offspring with each other. Different species are reproductively isolated. So, a species is a group of organisms that can reproduce and produce fertile offspring. But how does reproductive isolation even come about in the first place? There are multiple forms of speciation that can result in reproductive isolation, the best known of which being allopatric and sympatric speciation. Allopatric speciation is simply the inability for organisms to reproduce with each other because they are geographically separated. Thus, they evolve until they are reproductively isolated. Sympatric speciation is a speciation that occurs when two groups live in the same location but evolve differently until they can no longer reproduce. This form of speciation is the less common of the two and what I want to focus on today. The criterion for sympatric speciation goes as so. Species ranges must overlap significantly, there must be complete speciation, aka no interbreeding, the species must be sister species or part of a monophyletic group, and the history of the species' geographic range and evolution must make allopatry seem very unlikely. If this criterion is fulfilled, then it can be assumed that the species evolved sympatrically. Sympatric speciation isn't as frequently observed as allopatric speciation. In fact, it's almost only seen in plants and microorganisms. Sympatric speciation mostly occurs because of polyploidy. This is when an offspring inherits more than the normal chromosome number in the population. This renders them incapable of reproducing with individuals who have the normal chromosome number because they just have an extra chromosome. However, plants and microorganisms are special because they can self-fertilize. A plant that is polyploidy can reproduce with itself and make offspring that are also polyploidy. It can do this until a whole new species has been formed. There are some rare cases of sympatric speciation taking place in organisms that can't self-fertilize. For example, apple maggot flies used to lay their eggs only on the fruit of the hawthorn trees. But when apples were introduced to America, some flies began to lay their eggs on apples instead. Since these flies look for mates on the same kind of fruit they grow on, the two groups of flies have started to separate and gradually stopped breeding with each other. Even though this example is still kind of a work in progress, the two groups have already started to show genetic differences, and in the future they might even become two separate species. As an overview, sympatric speciation is a speciation that occurs due to organisms no longer being able to reproduce with each other due to evolutionary changes, and for a species to have come about via sympatry, they have to have fulfilled all four of the criterion.